All right. It is me this time, not other videos. It's actually me at the whiteboard so that you can see, and I do have a new chair, so hopefully that holds up. Anyway, kind of want to pick up where those videos left off. There was some, different ones I put up to kind of give you an overview of all the different views of it. Some of the things that are said kind of, I wouldn't say contradict each other, but different ways of expressing how to look at a complementary or supplementary angle or vertical angle. But just know that the main keys there is, if two angles are adjacent, they're going to share a side here, one of the rays. So if you got this angle and this angle, they're going to share a side and the vertex. Okay. If you've got, let's say you've got three angles here, and let's put another angle out this way, and let's mark these here. Okay, if I've got angles that are all combined here and look like they're all together, we got to realize that 2 and 3 are adjacent because they share this side, but 3 and 1 are not, because if I take 2 out of it and just look at it like this, this is this angle that has its sides, and this is this angle that has its sides. They do not share a side. So 1 and 3 are not adjacent. Even though they share a vertex, they do not share a side. So keep that in mind with adjacent angles. Linear pair like this here, these two are adjacent, but they also form a straight line 180 degrees. And so when that happens, they're a linear pair. Okay, and that tells us when we know it's a linear pair, then we can start plugging in numbers and know what the other number, like if this is 120, then we know the missing piece here is 60, so that it equals 180. So it gives us information. Complementary and supplementary, a way that I remember it is, because the hardest thing is to keep straight which one is which. So complementary is 90, they add up to 90. Supplementary means they add up to 180. Well, how I keep that straight is I realize that C comes before S in the alphabet. I know this is kind of a silly way, but C comes before S, so 90 comes before 180 on the number line. So that's how I keep them separate. Complementary means the two angles add up to 90. Supplementary means they add up to 180. One important thing about these two is they do not have to be adjacent. So I could have two angles that are separate. As long as they add up to 90, they're complementary. So one could be 50 and one could be 40, and they not even be adjacent to each other. Okay, so this one could be 50, this could be 40, and as long as they add up to 90, they're complementary. They do not have to be adjacent. Same with supplementary, except they add up to 180. They do not have to be adjacent. But a linear pair does. So if I look at this angle, let's say it's 30 and 150, it's several things going on. These two angles are adjacent. They're a linear pair because they form 180 and they're adjacent. And they're also supplementary. But if as soon as I separate them, okay, and put some space between them, they are not adjacent because they each have their own sides. Therefore they're not a linear pair. All that's left that they are is supplementary, meaning they add up to 180. So as long as you get that feel of how they go together and some of the terms there, it helps. Now the last thing with vertical is, I know they use the word probably across from. I look at it that when you form these four angles, excuse me, I'm going to I just noticed this marker is kind of going out, so I'll get a better one here. Just like in class. Now if I had a trash can nearby, I'd try to throw it and make it in the trash can, but I don't. But anyway, if I have these angles here that are vertical, I look as the two non-adjacent. So here's this angle, they're not adjacent, so they're vertical. But what's nice is if you know if one of them's 100, then the other's 100. Then you look at, okay, here's a straight line, and so if that one's 100, this one's 80, because it's got to form 180. And if that one's 80, then the vertical angle with it is also 80. Okay, so when you have a vertical angle formed, you only need one angle given to you, like maybe 20, and now you can solve for the rest. First one you can fill in is this one if you want to. You could also look at it as a straight line, so this is 160, makes 180, and this is vertical. Or you could look at this as a straight line, this thing here, and so it's 20 and 160. There's several different ways you can now fill in those missing angles. So let me put a couple examples up here, and we'll fill them in. So let's put 100, and then put some question marks. Let's make this one. And put some question marks. Let's say this is a linear pair. Okay. We'll call it a linear pair here. And let's say these two are complementary. Okay. So knowing this knowledge now, I can fill in those missing angles. If that's 100, then this is 100. And these form a linear pair, so that's 80. And this one's 80. Okay. Same thing with this. This is 25 then. These form a linear pair, like this is a straight line here, this angle and this angle. And so I just take 180 minus 25, and that's going to give me 155. Okay. And means that's 155. Okay. Here's a linear pair that tells me that this has to equal 180, so that's going to be 150, because I did 180 minus 30. And this is 90, because it's complementary. So to find what this angle is, I take 90 minus 20, and it's left with 70. Okay, I did 90, the full angle minus 20, and that gives me 70. So that's how you can fill in those missing angles there. Now, what they're going to start doing is, instead of using question marks, because we know in math for unknowns, since pre-algebra, is we use variables. We use a letter. So that's what you're going to start seeing. X being the most common, but you can see all the different kinds of letters, X and Y and Z. And so here's some of those same examples. Let's make this a little more. Okay. And then let's use a variable for this and actually put a little where we have to use some pre-algebra to solve it. Okay. And let's go over here and actually do one that is use 3 different letters, X, Y plus 10, and P. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do with that one to be able to solve it. And then let's put one with 2 different variables on both sides. So here's 3 or 4 different examples of problems that you'll start seeing. Now, don't freak out. You see all these numbers and letters, and you're like, "Whoa, we just hit the accelerator." As long as you use your geometry knowledge that you just learned about what these angles are, then all you have to do is plug in these values, and your pre-algebra takes over. Okay, and especially if you had algebra already, that kind of helps too, because you had more practice. But if you didn't, even if you just had pre-algebra, that's all we're doing, is taking the geometry knowledge and then putting the pre-algebra in it. So this one first. The only difference of this last one that we did is, instead of a question mark, I used X, okay? So I solve it the same way. X is going to be whatever 180 minus 50 is, okay? And that's going to be 130. Another way you could have set this up to make it look like a pre-algebra problem is X plus 50, okay, this angle plus this angle equals 180, okay? And so this angle plus this angle should equal 180. Well, now it looks like a pre-algebra problem where all you have to do is isolate the variable, and you've got X is 130, okay? So that's how this one is. It's just like the question mark, but it's now a letter, and you can set it up like a pre-algebra problem. Okay, let's do this one. Same thing. We've got one letter, except now we added a little bit to it, okay? And this is going to be, we're going to call this a complementary, so they're telling us it's complementary, so we know the whole thing adds up to 90. Now there's a couple different ways you can start this. I'm always been one that, whichever way is easiest for you, you can use, but you can right away find out what this is equal to, meaning, okay, if this whole thing is 90, if I take this one away, I'm left that this needs to equal 60, okay? So X plus 10 equals 60. You can set it up that way, and that's fine, because all I did was, if this angle is 30, then this means this angle is 60, so I set that equal to 60. Another way, and so if you were to solve this and isolate the variable, X is going to be 50. Now, one key point is, when you're solving for X, that's not the angle measure. That's what x is. The angle measure is still 60. See, if I plug this in and 50 plus 10 is 60, then the angle is 60. This one's 30, therefore it's 90. But if you're solving for x, you've got to find out what x is, what you can plug in for x to make this be correct. So if I did this, if I solved this way, I would put x plus 10 is 60. The angle's got to be 60. Then isolate the variable, and I've solved my variable. Another way you could have done this and got the x is 50 is you could have took the whole thing together. So x plus 10, that's this angle. Okay, that's the measure of this angle. Whatever x is plus 10, and then added the other angle, the 30, and you got it equal 90. Okay, so you would have got x plus 40, because you can combine those, and then move the 40, and you're still going to end up with x is 50. So there's two different ways to solve that, but both ways involve realizing that this, the only geometry part of this is realizing this is a 90-degree angle because it's complementary. However you set it up is the pre-algebra part. Okay, so either way, whichever way is easiest for you, that's your option. Now I know I'm going a little quick. These videos kind of a little bit long, and I want to make sure that we get all the material in as we get meatier here, as more things. But you can always run this back and look at it and break it down. Okay, so if it was like, whoa, I didn't even have a chance to write that down, just feel free to run it back and kind of go through it again. This one here, what's missing here is I need to know at least what one value is. If this is an unknown, there's no way I can solve this problem. I need something to set everything, start setting everything equal to. So let's say I make this, let's see, what did I put? Let's put 100. So once I know what that value is, I can start solving what the other letters are. Right away, I can solve what x is. X is going to be whatever this one is. So x is going to be 100 because it's vertical. Okay, so I've already solved for x. If I needed to solve for p, well, if this is 100 and they form a linear pair, okay, so p plus 100 is going to be 180. Okay, and if you move 100, then p is 80. Okay. Another way you could have looked at that is go ahead and just do the 100 or 180 minus 100 and just know that that's 80. Okay, that's another way you could have done it. But it's a linear pair with this, and it's a linear pair with 100, and so it's 80. Then to solve for y, okay, a couple different ways you can do it. You can combine it with this, or I can just, now that I know this is 80, it's kind of like puzzle pieces. Once you fill in one puzzle piece, that helps you find the other one, and you can go about it whichever way you want. There's multiple different ways. But I would like to go, okay, hey, that's 80, so this is the same angle measurement. Okay, now y is not 80, because if I put in 80 for y, that's going to be 80 plus 10, saying this angle is 90, and it's not 90, it's 80. So what I have to do is say that y plus 10 equals 80. Okay, this angle, whatever this angle is, which is y plus 10, is supposed to be the same angle measurement as this one, which is 80. And now I can isolate the variable, and y is 70. Okay? So there's my three variables if I had to solve for each letter, and that's what each letter is. Now the angles are 100, 100, 80, and 80. Okay? But the letters, so you know x is 100 because there's nothing added to it. P is 80 because there's nothing added to it. But y is actually 70, so that way when you plug in y, 70 plus 10 is 80, the measurement. Okay? The last one, what I did was, okay, these two angles, all we know about them, we don't have any numbers like 100 like we did on the last one, but we do know that this angle is equal to this angle. Whatever measurement this one is, like if it ends up being 30, then this is also 30. If it ends up being 50, then this is also 50. So we know that those two are equal, so I can set them equal to each other. That's exactly how I do it. That measurement is equal to that measurement. Now I just need to solve for x, and I can know what the measurement is. First it'll tell me what x is, and then I can know what the measurement is. So if I solve, I'm going to move 2x over. Okay. And so x is 30. Now this is why I'm not an art teacher. If I was to plug this in, this is not going to look like a 90. Because if I plug this in, that's meaning this is a 90-degree angle. Okay, because 3 times 30 is 90. And if I plug it in over here, it should also come out to 90. And 2 times 30 is 60 plus 30 is 90. Now these are not 90-degree angles. That's why my drawing's off. But x is 30. We solved it correctly. Plugged in 3x equals 2x plus 30, and we come out with 30. And as you see, when you check your answer, they should equal each other, just like they do. Okay? Like I said, a lot of info now that we're plugging in variables into it, but that's the problems that you're going to see as you go on. Go back through, kind of watch those examples that you can do your assignment with. And so I'm going to put up 4 problems I'm going to have you solve for the variables. Okay, so on this one, it's going to be a linear pair. So that's telling you some information. And you're going to solve for x. So you need to solve what x is. This one is going to be complementary. So this is complementary. So that tells you something. And you need to solve for what x is. Okay, so you're going to solve for what x is. This one, these are vertical. And you need to solve for x, y, and c. Okay. And then this is vertical. And you need to solve for x. Okay? So just like the ones we did in the examples, go through those, try these. Just make sure that this is coming out to where, this comes out to where it's supposed to. This, make sure it ends up being complementary. This, make sure these are equal. Same thing with here. You can, when you get your x, plug it back in and see if these come out equal to each other. Okay? All right. And this will be your assignment to turn in. Make sure you turn them in on the photo. And that'll be your daily assignment. Thanks, guys.